Alexandria Jackson, you directed the documentary short Sophie and the Baron about your cousin, Sophie Kipner, an artist who wanted to reinterpret the classic Rolling Stone photos taken by Baron Woolman. What made you decide to pick up the camera and commit all this to film?
Well, it was very organic at first. Sophie wanted me, I have a background in photojournalism, and Sophie wanted me to meet Baron, who had shot some of the most iconic music photography, of Woodstock era and Jimi Hendrix with his guitar. And both of us were huge fans. So I came in to meet them and I fell in love with their dynamic. The two of them were so charming and wonderful together that I just started filming as she started to reinterpret the first piece. And then quickly saw a really beautiful story in their friendship and in the mentorship that Baron was offering not just Sophie but ultimately me as well. And so we kept shooting, and then I was like a little pest, and every time was followed them to Santa Fe and encouraged them to get together over the 3 years, and just I kept shooting.
And the film is really, showcases the collaboration of art because we've got, the photography of Baron, you've got Sophie's visual art, bringing in the third art form, which is your filmmaking. What was it like to have to think about all of these kind of forms collide into one sort of united piece?
Well, yeah, that was just so fun. I think there's something so important about artists validating other artists and kind of the confidence that that can give you. And but for Baron to open up his prolific photographs of some of these, to Sophie, a newer artist, he had seen her work and really liked what she was doing, but she was brave enough to ask. And actually, Sophie met Baron really fortuitously in a bar while bartending in London. And they got to talking. And after he left, she looked him up and realized that she had been collecting his images for years, wanting to reinterpret them, and had just met him. So they kind of were pen pals for a while. And then she ended up got brave enough when back in the States, and asked him if she could do it. And he said yes. He which is something really beautiful about Baron, is that he just encourages you to say yes, jump in, and because you can always say no later, but just do it. And so she interpreted his art, and then they let me come in, who knows why, but we just had a really fun time. And so I was then filming them. And I think for Baron, it ended up being, he was so comfortable with his own work and his own legacy that he was happy to let this happen. And he didn't really see anything I'd done other than some that he knew I could shoot photos, but and so there was a lot of trust there. And yeah, their friendship was different mediums, different ages, different eras. And it all works because I think that art can really unify us in beautiful ways. And, beyond sort of the art that they made together, their friendship was really wonderful too. So.
Yeah, and there are a lot of stories about tortured artists, but this one really feels like it's you're striving to capture the joy in creating art. Is that part of what you wanted to really showcase here about this relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just felt great being around them. So I couldn't, and they're just such wonderful people to watch, and the way that they interact. And, you know, sort of we filmed over a period of 3 years, and 6 months before we finished shooting, Baron found out that he had ALS. And it was a very rapid decline. And I was the last person, other than a few very close people to him, to see him in March 2020 before the world shut down, to kind of pick up some footage in Santa Fe. And so what had begun for him as this, him being open to mentoring and to opening his world, really, I think, became something that he couldn't have even imagined, in that it gave him this, so he lost his ability to speak about a month after I left in March, but he was very much himself. ALS is one of the most brutal diseases I've ever seen firsthand. And but he was so himself. So he, while locked off from the rest of the world, was really involved in editing this film. And really loved the movie and loved Sophie, and literally every day we were speaking, and I was sending him cuts, and he was giving me shit for misspelling Jimi Hendrix. And I mean, he was a really fun, lovely person with great life advice and just wonderful to sort of interact with. And I think that he could have never known that by saying yes and jumping in with Sophie, that he then would have this really beautiful thing to focus on, which he called the film the bookend to his life as a photographer and friend. So he was able to focus on that, and through the pandemic, which was like kind of a gift to all of us.
And of course, him having passed away, now having this film as a sort of celebration of him, and as a document of just his artistry, like you couldn't have kind of imagined what the significance of that would have been when you started.
No, none of us could have imagined any of this, to be honest. And I think that's sort of what's so beautiful about Baron's legacy. It's not just his incredible work some of the most iconic photos of our time, really, but his philosophy in life, which was to just say yes and to seize the moment and to follow your bliss and to collaborate, and to validate each other in a way that I feel sometimes can be missing in, film is very collaborative, but there are a lot of different art forms are sometimes you're in your own bubble, and that's fine and great. But how cool if you've reached that level to be happy to mentor and to be open to mentoring younger and letting, younger filmmakers, younger artists work with you. And I think for us in this film, it was kind of a family affair. Our producers, Courtney Cox and Joanna Natazagara, gave me my first jobs in film and were incredibly involved in this. Not many people know that Courtney Cox is really into documentaries. And so she's like a brilliant in the edit room. And then I made, my editor was my friend from film school, our composers, all of our dear friends, even people that he had shot wanted to be like Mick Jagger gave us a song. We have Sympathy for the Devil in the film. And that typically doesn't happen with the short film, but it's really a testament to Baron, who had shot, of course, some of Jagger's most famous shots, like the one behind me with him in the top hat and stuff. So there was just a lot of goodwill and yeah, on a lot of different levels of people being involved because it made you feel good. And that warmth kind of, I think we all felt in different ways, everyone who worked on it.
What stands out to you about Woolman's photography and his body of work, and what do you think it was that Sophie was able to kind of draw out in it in using her different art form?
Yeah, it's fun to hear Sophie talk about it because she talks about how his art has a lot of juju. She says like something about, he didn't just shoot these celebrities, he shot crowds. And the sort of central piece in the film is actually not a shot of anyone knows, but a shot of the crowd at Woodstock and people experiencing Woodstock, and so the way she works is she blind contours first her initial, which is an art school technique that she kind of used as the premise for her technique, but she doesn't look at the subject. She looks, she only looks at the subject and not at the page. So she's really which is kind of a way for her, she feels, not to judge her art. She started it in London to get out of her head, because oftentimes, for instance, like artists don't love necessarily playing Pictionary because they're supposed to be good, or an amazing singer might not love doing karaoke because you're supposed to be amazing. This was a way to kind of even the playing field and just get out of your head. And it's something so that she used to access these things. So to your point that he has so much emotion and cool juju, she says, in his work, that when she does the blind contour, she's just looking at his picture and not the page, and just sort of does the initial blind contour. Then of course her artistry comes in when she shades it in and brings it to life and paints it. She looks while doing that, but the initial thing is really just motivated by what she's seeing. And there's a lot of parallels. It's much like how a photojournalist shoots without necessarily consciously composing a shot. They're taking a picture, not making a picture. And that's how Baron described and he talks about it in the film, you know, he's not hearing the music around him. He's really just in a trance capturing it. And that's, and to add what you were saying before, another layer, it's how kind of I've shot the two of them. It wasn't overly set up, you know, I wasn't moving lights around, I was really moving with them, and it was a kind of a very organic, the way the three of us work was quite organic, even though in different mediums, you know.